we're talking about triangles one more time. And here, first of all, let's start with questions. Questions from last time. There was one question that Livia asked. We'll get to that at the end. It's a good question, but we're not going to answer her question when she's not here. Yeah.
I guess I'm about to admit publicly on the video that I didn't look at the blog. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So you can tell me if it was raised there.
The blog is, we're waiting for Triads and Triangles.
Okay, well, if it was raised there, you can direct me there and I'll go look at it. But just something that I felt like in the small group last week, with my partner, we kept seeing triangles everywhere.
Right.
And then throughout my week, I've been looking at my own life and just seeing triangles everywhere.
Okay.
But something that came up in our discussion was whether there's such thing as a healthy triangle.
That exactly was Livia's question. You must have been her partner.
No, I wasn't, but it came up when we were talking together.
Right. See, triangle. What we talked about last time was a perverse triangle. And what we're about to talk about now is what's called the stable triangle. Okay. Not all three people are a triangle. In other words, the same way that not every two people are a complementary cycle, so not all three people are a triangle. But there is a tendency to form triangles, and that's what we're talking about. In other words, there's a natural tendency. It's not an unhealthy one, but it sometimes makes it difficult for dyads to communicate. So the point that we're trying to see is how these triangles function and what they limit. If you remember regulation and intersubjective, so if we go back to that and we say that families spend a great deal of time regulating. That's sort of a common thing that people do. They keep the system understandable, they keep the system safe, and by doing it, they inhibit. To keep something safe, you inhibit change. Change is something that happens periodically, not continuously, right? So the issue in a family, and here we're talking about the issue in a triangle, is to what extent is the triangle keeping us safe for now, and to what extent is the triangle inhibiting change. Now, what you'll see, we'll be talking about it as we talk about how families grow over time, how they grow or they don't grow over time. Families are not challenged every single day by change, right? Think about your own families. So what you want to have in a family is a system that's flexible enough to be able to engage in change when change is required. Change that has to do from the outside or from development from the inside. And so when you look at a triangle and you say it seems to be working and it's not inhibiting growth, so that's like just the way it is, right? The idea is that you'll see these triangles and you say, is it bothering anybody? And a lot of times the answer will be, we'll see. We'll wait and we'll see. In other words, let's say a family has kids that are in elementary school. They have 4 kids, let's say, and they're all in elementary school, 4 or 5, and they've never been challenged by the question of how do you choose a high school? How do you choose a yeshiva katana? Where do you fit? So forth. So for a while, the family is set up in a certain way, and everything is okay. It's not a problem. Then the question will be, is the way that the family functioning now able to change because there's going to be a change? The system becomes open to the outside world in a way that it wasn't open before. And is the family able to engage in the kind of communications that makes the growth at the next level possible? Or is it something that is, let's say, so well regulated that it's too well regulated, right? Regulation is not a curse, as long as it's not the only thing that a family can do. So when you see 3 people, and we're going to be doing that today, you see 3 people and they're organized in a certain way, and it seems to fall that way. In other words, the pieces of the puzzle go up and they tend to fall in the same way every time. And you say to yourself, well, that's us, that's who we are, this is the family. If that organization is able to create change over time when it's needed, then you'll have a healthy enough family, right? But if it's not, then you'll have a family that likes that triangle more than it likes reality, right? In other words, if regulation is working too well, then people will vote to keep the regulation the same, even though it's at the cost of adaptation, at the cost of accepting a new family member, at the cost of not being able to deal with diversity, at certain costs. And then the family will become more and more rigid. Does that give you an answer?
Yes.
Okay. So, any other questions? That's the main question that comes up in triangles. So we'll go on. Now, what I wanted to do today is to show you something that is a sort of a way of understanding. Is a way of understanding how it is that triangles tend to be stable. Now, those of you who are reading Lynn Hoffman, all of those of you who are not really reading Lynn Hoffman, raise your hand. Okay. No. If you want to feel at the end of this course like you know how to think about families, you can't just count on me. There's stuff to read there, and it's your own education, but there's nothing better to read about. Lynn Hoffman suggests that there's one kind of a triangle that tends to be stable. Anybody read it? There's one kind of a triangle that tends to be stable, and that's where there's one positive and two negatives, right? One positive link, we always see the same, we like each other, we like to be close, and the other relationships are less positive. That's the stable triangle. So I wanted to try to show you how that works, and then in the exercise you'll have a chance to sort of experience how it works. This is not in the book, but it's a way of looking at it that I think makes some sense. So I'm A. Everybody here, think of yourself as A, right? And then there's two other people, B and C. So now, in every dyad, because people live in dyads and triangles, right? In every dyad, there's going to be, the bus just came? Welcome. Wait for the chairs. Someday we'll have chairs that can move without with the 5 decibels instead of 50. I asked myself, I'm A, right? So I asked myself about B, right? Do I like him? Does he like me? Is that something that we can answer? We can usually figure it out, right? By saying yourself, what's my relationship with my brother or my cousin or whatever? I can say, well, I can figure out what my relationship with him is. We can figure it out together. How much I like him, how much he likes me. In the dyad, things are not so mysterious, okay? But, and then in addition, you see we have A and B, so we also have A and C, right? So I have a relationship with my sister. And my relationship with my sister, we can figure that out. She likes me, I like her. We have this struggle, that. So we can figure out our relationship. So me and my brother, and me and my sister, those are dyads that we can figure out. Now, let's ask another question. What about the relationship between my brother and my sister? How well do I understand that relationship, right? That's getting a little bit more mysterious because I'm not there. So I'm wondering about that relationship. And while I'm wondering about that other relationship, we go one more level. And we say, I have this relationship with my sister, right? Now, I get closer to my sister, I get further to my sister. How does my brother feel about my relationship with my sister? That's already getting pretty mysterious, right? In other words, okay, so I'm going to go and do something pleasant with my sister, and I say to myself, well, that's good. How does my brother look at that? Does he see it as good, now the two of them will leave me alone? Does he see it as, uh-oh, you like her more than you like me? And so forth. I have a fight with my sister, right? And so we are in tension. How does my brother look at the tension that I have with my sister? Does he say, oh, well, that's unfortunate because I love the two of you, and it's too bad that you're having a fight? Or does he say, good, I have something to gain from this because you guys are always excluding me, so now if you're having a fight, so then I can be closer to each of you or to one of you. That's getting harder to understand, right? And what we're talking about in regulation depends on feeling at home. Feeling at home in the system involves knowing the answers. In other words, knowing the map, how it's all working. And then we simply go one level further in this matter, and we say, well, let's see, there's the way that my brother looks at my relationship with my sister. How does my sister relate to how he relates to that relationship? In other words, I'm going out and doing something that's pleasant with my sister, and my brother looks at that in a certain way. How does my sister look at the way he looks at that? Right? Now you can say, well, this is family politics. Yeah, that's exactly family politics. In other words, you don't have to run very many loops of who does think that what about what to see that you get into something that's not very clear. Now, of course, you could say, well, why don't we all talk about it? But you guys live in families, right? What families ever talk about these things? So the family tends to become uncertain. Okay, now I'm going out with my sister, so I'm getting closer to her, and my brother likes the fact that I'm getting closer to my sister, because that means that he doesn't have to deal with her, right? But how does my sister like the fact that he's happy to have her off his back? Maybe she likes it, maybe she doesn't. The family is going to be sort of inscrutable. You see what I mean? This speaks to you? Now, you'll see this, every time you see a family in treatment, and you start to look at one relationship, you'll be looking at how that relationship impacts on another relationship, and how that other relationship impacts on another relationship, right? In other words, I get close to my sister, how does my brother relate to that? How does my sister relate to how my brother relates to that? So the family gets into something that's a little hard to solve. Now let's look at the stable triangle and see how it regulates this. You know, the idea of uncertainty raises a question of dysregulation. We don't know. And so if we don't know, we might be not sure how to proceed. So let's have a look. This is a stable triangle. In this stable triangle, me and my brother, we're pals. We have a positive relationship. That's how it is. We're defined as being the two that like each other, get along with each other, like to do things with each other. And with my sister, less so. It doesn't have to be that we're both, want to kill her, but it's less so. That my relationship to her is less than my relationship with my brother. My brother's relationship with my sister is less than my relationship with him. Okay? This is a stable triangle. Now let's see how the stable triangle works. If we ask, how do I get along with B? Okay. That we didn't need the stable triangle for. I know what my relationship with my brother is. I know what my relationship with my sister is. There's no uncertainty. And actually, in the stable triangle, I even know that my brother and my sister are less tight than my brother and myself, right? So far, so good. let's look at the two next levels. And as you see, the two next levels are just the beginning. You can do that any way you want. So let's have a look and say, my relationship with my sister, which is less good, right? How does my brother look at that? Is it clear? He's happy that I'm further from her than I am with him because his relationship with me is tight. So there's no question involved. You see? In other words, I'm further from my sister. He's happy with that. Do I have a question about it? No. I know that the two of us are tighter, and he likes it that way. So he's happy with that. Moshe?
How do you know that he's happy about that?
How do I know? Well, because the stable, that's exactly the point. In the stable triangle, he and I know how we look at the other relationships because we're tight. Yeah? In other words, if I'm further from my sister, he gains from it. How do I know that? Because my relationship with him is never in question. It's always stable, right? So if I say, in this family, if I am further from my sister, does my brother like it? Yeah. It doesn't raise a mystery. I don't have to wonder what it does to my relationship with him because my relationship with him is fixed. We're all set, okay?
But he's happier if you're further and further away from her?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, in other words, my relationship with her is less tight, and he likes that because it makes him more tight with me. And he and I are always tight. That's the stable part of the triangle.
Why do you become tighter if he's further away from the sister?
Does it have to be that way? It tends to be that way. I mean, we're talking about human relationships, so it's not mathematics. Do you think that, let's say, if I get closer to my sister, and the issue is mainly that me and my brother are tight, that he's going to like that? Probably not. Why? Because in triangles, he's going to say, wait a minute, what about me? Right, over here. You know, we're the pals. Why are you doing that with her? We do these things.
Is that coming from an insecure place from him, or just like a sort of selfish, I want your attention?
Right. It comes from a human place, which is always insecure. Maria's question is a very important one. Are people secure in their relationships? You know, in fairy tales, people are secure in their relationships. In other words, everybody's happy that everybody has a good relationship. You can find a family like that if you go looking in the streets, but you won't see them in your room. People who are secure in their relationships, you won't see them. That's not what we're talking about. But the people who come to us, and us, let's say, you know, so there's always an element of question. That's the whole point about the issue of regulation. That becomes more clear, it becomes more stable, it becomes more secure. Yeah.
On a question based off of his, so if there was like a D sibling with four
So I
siblings,
can't hear you well.
there was like a fourth sibling, and A and B were close, and A was also close with another sibling. Like,
Right.
it wasn't just a triangle,
Right.
so one wasn't feeling left out. Would that bring that same feeling?
Okay,
Of
so
insecurity?
when you go, see, we're doing it slowly, right? We went from 1 to 2, we're going from 2 to 3. You want to go to 4? We go to 4, but next week. In other words, what we'll see, and I think you started to see it when you were doing the exercise last week, is that if you look at a group of 8 people, that's a lot of triangles. You can calculate them. It's a lot of triangles. So then you say, well, how do they impact on each other? And you get to a situation which is not manageable in terms of triangles. That's why we go from 3 to 4 and up. That's next week. In other words, you need something to resolve larger systems. Right now, we're just looking at the triangle as a way of understanding it. But once you go past 3, then it becomes unmanageable that way.
Right, 3 sounds like that number is generally more challenging in friendship.
Sorry?
And people in general say that a 3-sum friendship is much more challenging because one tends to get left out or.
Right,
it's
well,
much harder to
the
balance.
definition of a group for boys, for little boys, you know, under the age of 10, is 2 in and 1 out. Right, that's the definition of 3 guys. Now, you know, it's with women it's a little different. When we get to adolescence, we'll be talking about some of the gender differences. But there's a tendency for 3 a triangle or a triad, it tends to be somewhat unstable. And that's because people are insecure and they don't ask, and if you don't have the possibility of checking all these things. Now, men have less of an experience perhaps than women with this. Sometimes, if there are three good friends and life is well supported, so there's enough security, then three girls will talk to each other and say, look, this happened, and what did you feel? That doesn't happen so much with the guys. It could, maybe in another 100 years it will, but that they solve it. But it's not common. It's more common, even among friendships, let alone in families, that people come to conclusions without checking. When you come to conclusions without checking, that's part of what Moshe's question is. Maybe B likes the fact that I'm getting closer to my sister, because then he says to himself, oh, wouldn't that be nice? I see that my brother is getting closer to my sister, and once that happens, then I'm going to be able to get closer. That's not a stable triangle, right? That's a family that's growing. That's a family that isn't regulated, because by saying that, you're saying, things could change, right? The stable triangle is what keeps us from changing. It keeps it the way it is. As I said, sometimes we need to keep it as it is for a while. If it keeps us absolutely the way it is, then it inhibits change and doesn't allow relationships to grow.
So if it is a growing family,
Sorry?
and so if it is a growing family.
Wait 1 second, one more. What?
So if it is a growing family.
Yeah.
And there is three people, but it's not challenged and it's not called a triangle. We were having this discussion last week in the exercise, if every three people in a family is called a triangle or not?
Right. That question, Levia asked that in the blog, and Avital asked it in the here, and now you're asking it. It's good. It's a good question. It's the most important question. What makes it possible for three people to be, if we use Maria's word, secure enough to do something other than organize themselves in a stable triangle? Right? That's an important question. But it's not the usual situation. In other words, when we see people coming for treatment, usually the family, you could be seeing one person, right? You're seeing a 40-year-old man, and you say to him, and what was it like at home? Oh, he said home was terrific. That's the beginning. Or it was terrible, but something sort of general. And then you say, well, let's hear about your relationships with your parents and with your siblings. And you start to hear that there's a brother that I talk to and a brother that I don't talk to. And that's been going on for 20 years. That's pretty well regulated, right? That's pretty stable. And I hate it, but I can't change it. And you say, how much do you hate it and how much are you sure you can't change it? And he gives you 50,000 reasons why it can't be changed, because it would impact on his father this way, and his uncle that way, and the grandfather that way, and so forth. And then you start to appreciate the stability of a stable triangle. And you say, does this do something for you? So we all know where we're at. Comes Pesach, we all know where we have to sit. We all know who asks who and who doesn't talk to who. And if it would change, the whole Seder would blow up. So we keep it this way, but it keeps us at a certain distance. So we're talking about, you see, one of the things that's important in learning about family systems is that theory is just theory, right? In other words, theory is a way of thinking that helps you to appreciate some of the things that you sometimes see in a clearer way. Not more than that. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be only that way. But if it's a good theory, then it has what's called heuristic value. It helps you to see something. It helps you to understand something better than you would have understood it before. Don't ever ask of theory more than that. If you ask more of it, you get less. That's, I think, he told us that that's in the beginning of Chovas Levavos, in the name of the philosopher who was Aristotle, who said, don't ask mathematics about human relationships. Mathematics is an exact science. We're not exactly. So, you see these diagrams and they look exact. All right, so they look exact. Then you see if it helps you when you're sitting with people to say, I could see that, and it helps me to talk, and it helps my client to talk about it. That's doing well for for a theory. You don't need to say, do more than that. So these things, when we do the exercise, you'll be asking yourselves, does it tend to happen? What power does it have? What makes change possible? And is inhibiting change always a bad thing? The answer is no. People regulate all the time. But what's the cost of it? What's the cost of the regulation? So if I say to myself, the way this triangle is set up, my brother and I agree, or you could say more specifically, the family is more regulated, the family is more secure, the family feels more like the family. This is how we are. The we is organized in a certain way. There is no way in which human relations don't get organized. And one of the simple ways they get organized is a triangle. So when I get closer to my sister, my brother's not going to like it. And I know it, you see. So then I have to say to myself, maybe I'll, sneak out on Motzei Shabbos with my sister to go visit somebody or other, or some aunt. And I'll do it when my brother's off, somewhere else. And I'll ask my mother just not to tell him about it. Now, this never happens in our families, but you probably heard from the neighbors, right? That's an example of a triangle that is a little too stable. And you say, well, now, if my mother says, time for family therapy, this is a stable triangle. Now, how does family therapy work? Mother does it. She says, listen, sweetheart, you think your brother is going to be jealous about your relationship with your sister? He says, of course he is. He always is. How do you know? Because I'm jealous when he, right? So, okay, why don't we all sit down and talk about our relationships? That's science fiction, but we'll get to that. Those are families that you won't see, but those are families you can learn from. Because all of therapy is essentially learning to do what people who don't need therapists do on their own. We just help that along. Maria.
So I love Olivia's question, and I was thinking of answering it, but I wasn't sure. So I was wondering, her question was, is there such a thing as a positive triangle?
Right, we're going to get to that in just a minute.
Okay.
In just a minute. This is not a negative triangle. This is simply a stable triangle. If you read it in Hoffman, it sounds like it's the enemy, because family therapy was a little bit exaggerated in the 70s. The idea of the fantasy of family therapy with small families in San Francisco and in New York was that they're always open to communication all the time and everything can always happen. Well, that didn't hold up, and it's not a useful way to look at human relationships. The stable triangle is not the enemy, the same way that the regulation is not the enemy. Regulation is part of human relations. It's necessary at some points. The question is how rigid it gets. In other words, is it something that you can use when you need it, and you can go beyond it, right? So your sister, you want to go out with your sister, and you say to mom, don't tell my brother about this. And she says, of course I'm going to tell him about it. It's good for you, it's good for your sister, it's good for him. Trust me, you'll figure it out. And so she tells the brother, and the brother comes to me and says, you went out with her? We don't like her. And I say to him, you and I were going to talk to mom now, because I don't know how to do this on my own, but mom said it was a good idea, so let's find out. Either we'll be brokers with mom, or we'll find out something from her. And mom says, listen, this got organized, at the time when grandpa died, and, things were unstable, and so you guys got together, and that worked out better. Doesn't have to stay that way. Doesn't have to stay that way. And then we're heading to the so-called positive triangle. But this is something that's not the enemy. It's just something to appreciate when it becomes an inhibitor of change that's necessary.
So my question was going to be, if there's a hierarchy, like two parents and a child, and the parents are like a united front,
Right.
strong.
Okay, so I made it easier here because I gave you a non-perverse triangle, right? This triangle is three siblings. Does it cross hierarchical lines? Well, in a large family, if you have more than about half a generation between siblings, in other words, you have people that are 10 years older than each other and are given some hierarchical function, like you have to listen to your older sister when she's staying with you because she's my surrogate, then it could be hierarchical. There's elements of hierarchy with large families and half-generational differences. But in a smaller family, you assume that the siblings are all hierarchically at the same level, and we didn't put in a parent here, right? So this is not a perverse triangle. This is simply a stable triangle, but it's not a perverse one. The problem with the perverse one we'll get to in a minute. You'll see that. But let's just take one other question and see. The last question would be, okay, so me and my brother, we're close, and we're less tight with my sister. Now, let's see, I know my relationship between me and my brother, and I know my relationship with me and my sister, and I know that when I fight with my sister, my brother likes it. Now, how does my sister like it that when my brother likes it when I fight with my sister? Well, she doesn't like it, but I know that she doesn't like it. In other words, I don't say to myself, this is a great mystery, right? I'm having problems with my sister. Oh, well, let's take it the other way, right? I'm going to go out with my sister, so I'm going to change something here. And does my brother like it? No. What does my sister feel about my brother not liking it? She doesn't like it, right? Why would she like it? So no matter how you go, see, I did A in those relationships, but any other question is resolvable. It's all clear. Nothing has to change. We know the situation. Look at this triangle, somebody propose another question, and let's see if we know the answer. Because I only took some of the questions, there are more questions here. Yeah?
So let's say A and B go out and C is excluded.
Right.
So is C only, meaning is the possibility that C, it's not that C doesn't want A and B to be close, it's just he feels excluded. So if he was involved, he wouldn't have an issue with them being close.
Exactly. In other words, let's take the brother and sister so it's easier. So my brother and I go out, and does my sister like the fact that we're close? No, because she's excluded. Okay. The fact that she doesn't like the fact that we're close. What does my brother think about the fact that she doesn't like it when we go out? He likes it, right? Because he has a negative relationship with her. So the fact that it makes her unhappy makes him happy.
Well, let's say it started from more like a power of place. Like she only didn't like it because she was excluded. If she was included, then she wouldn't have an issue with them being
Right,
close.
right. Eunice is introducing the element of change. You see where you put it in? In other words, if she's excluded, she doesn't want to be excluded, right? So that's an issue of change. And that's where you would, you're a therapist, right? Since we're all therapists. So we would really like this sister to find a way to solve this, right? So we take her aside, that's what you did, and said, wait a minute, maybe she likes the fact that they're tight because she feels that that gives her hope that she can be tight. That's not a positive triangle. That's not a stable triangle. That's becoming unstable. She's saying, I can change my relationship with this brother. I can change my relationship with that brother from negative to positive, right?
I mean, it only became stable because she was excluded.
It became stable because all of them agreed that this is safer than changing it. Now, the point of the triangle, when it's not a perverse triangle, is that everybody agrees on it. In other words, the triangle is not done to somebody. For example, you could say, oh, these two brothers, they pushed the sister out. She undoubtedly feels that way, right? And I'm looking at I did brothers and sisters, so I'm looking at this side of the room. We're talking about the sisters here. So she undoubtedly feels they pushed me out. Was she part of that arrangement? Yes. Triangles are done by the three participants. In other words, there was something, when she, for example, goes to her mother and says, there's another triangle. If she goes to her mother and says, these boys are excluding me, and mother says, don't worry, I'll take care of you. You come close to me, and you won't feel it so bad with your brothers. That's how boys are. So what has mother said about the triangle? Right? Mother has said, make a triangle with me. It's you and me against the boys, right? And the girl says, okay, fair enough. And then she and her mother are continuously bellyaching about the fact that the boys, she doesn't have to like it, but she's a part of it, because she doesn't say to each of them, I don't like my relationship with you. I want it to change, and it doesn't have to, hurt him. That would be, that's when it becomes unstable. This is a way that things tend to get organized, and each of them are out now.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think you have the next question already. Yeah.
To be considered like a triangle, does it have to be like a pattern, or it could be like one day my brother and sister go to the mall and they exclude me and I feel left out, so in that moment, that's a
Right.
triangle, or it has to be like an ongoing
That's a triangle for a day.
for a day?
Right. In other words, things tend to, put it this way, if you look at sibling relationships from a distance, and some of you may think about your own sibling relationships and your own families and say, how was it organized at different times? When did it change? It was stable this way, and then it changed to another triangle, but another stable triangle. It usually isn't every other day. It's usually periods of time, and periods of time we'll be talking about at the beginning of next semester. But while the oldest brother was still at home, it was one way. And then when he left, so it became different. But it became different, and again, a stable triangle. Right? In other words, because the stable triangle allows us to know where we're holding. Now, if you would ask, take Eunice's question one step further. The sister says, I'm the loser here. I'm losing out because I don't have a relationship with this brother and I don't have a relationship with that. I'm losing out. Who actually are the big losers in the stable triangle? The brothers. The brothers, because their relationship is based on the fact that they can only talk about the sister. In other words, they don't talk about each other. Because once you have a stable triangle, then the two people who are in a positive relationship, their relationship is limited. You see, they're limiting each other. B said, my brother says to me, why were you smiling at your sister? And I said, oh, I wasn't smiling at her. That was a burp. I wasn't smiling at her. And I say to my brother, listen, the fact that she came home with that good grade, and you said, that's great. What's great about it? He said, oh, I didn't say that. So they start to limit each other to the positive relationship that's connected to the other negative relationship. In other words, the two people who have a bond against somebody, as it were, against somebody else, closer as opposed to further, those people are limiting their relationship because they're forming their relationship connected to the other person and not just a dyad. So the stable triangle has a way in which everybody wins regulation and loses into subjectivity, right? So then we go to the usual form of a triangle. Now, the one that we have here is that the father and mother are always agreeing that the kids are brats, right? This kid doesn't learn, and this kid doesn't behave, and this kid doesn't learn, and this kid doesn't behave. Those are like the two main things that go on in families. It doesn't learn, doesn't behave, and maybe doesn't sleep, So the father and the mother, this is a perverse triangle, right? Because it crosses hierarchical lines. The father and the mother have a hierarchical distance from the kids. So, in this situation, if you say to yourself, who are the losers? If you look at a family like this, and you'll see families like this, you'll see families that come in and say, we're fine, we just want to talk about our kids. All of them. They said, we didn't win the lottery, we lost the lottery. I don't know who was giving out the genes, but we got these kids that we can't handle, or some of them, or whatever. And they're both agreeing that these kids are not behaving, not learning, not behaving. And they come, and you say to yourself, this is an interesting situation here, because it seems like it's a good couple, right? Because they seem to agree on everything. And you ask them if they ever disagree, and they say, oh no, we never disagree. We always agree, because it says in that book, every 20 years there's another one of that book, that says that parents always have to agree. Every 20 years they say parents have to agree, the next 20 years it says it's better not to agree. It goes in cycles of a generation. And English in America has been going in that cycle from 1830. It's way before Freud. Freud was born 25 years after this started. It started with the printing press, with mass printing. In the middle of the 1800s, when there was mass printing, you know why there was mass printing in the middle 1800s? Aside there was technological advancement. Why were people buying books? Because there was nothing else to do on the railroad. And the railroads were being built. You see, if you're on a horse, you can't read. But if you're on a railroad, you can't do anything. You know, don't do anything with it, you just sit. So that and the technological advance of mass printing created all sorts of books, including parental guidance books. That's when they started. And every 20 years they flipped from be strict, don't be strict, be strict, don't be strict. It's cultural. People who are brought up strict write books about not being strict. People who are brought up not being strict write books about being strict. So don't believe too much in the advance of science, right? But, you know, if you're old enough, you've seen a couple of these things go on. And by the way, when people, you know, so they went to the train station, they bought the books, and they sat and read. And what did the parental literature say? There's this horrible thing going on with children these days. Horrible. Instead of sewing, instead of, you know, working in the fields, kids are wasting their time and ruining their minds by this horrible new thing called reading. That's what reading was approached. That's how reading was first approached. Now you say, you know, take a book. That's a good thing. But in the 1830s, it was considered to be like this in the 21st century. Same literature, same curses, everything. So we weren't the railroad, but we were. So the parents always agreed, because they read the book that said that you are supposed to agree, and undoubtedly the person who wrote the book, his parents never agreed. So what is it about the idea that parents should always agree? Is that a robust idea that they should always agree? It's completely impossible, right? No two human beings can ever completely agree about anything. That's why there's plurality, right? That's why there's other people. Nobody's supposed to have the answer, so why would two people have the same answer? So the assumption is that parents have different views, and in a situation of intersubjectivity, you know, when we can share views and learn from each other, so the parents have different views and can work with different views. That's what's called intersubjectivity. Intersubjectivity is not becoming one person. Intersubjectivity is staying two people and being able to see different viewpoints and maybe not to agree. Oh, so what happens if, God forbid, parents don't agree? So if you look at the parents who don't come to us and say, how do you work it out? They say, what do you mean work it out? Life works out, so we do it this way. She thinks we should be more strict with the boy. I think we should be less strict with the boy. But we understand that the boy needs to have some line for a month, not for his entire life, for a month. So we agree that we're going to try and do it her way first, and we're going to see what the results are and learn from it. And if we learn that being less strict is a good thing for him, then fine. And if not, we've learned something from the month, because life is one big experiment, and the people who jump to the answers are not living. You have to do the experiment to learn from it. And after a month or 2 months or a zman or whatever, we say, what did we learn from this? That it didn't work, so we'll do it the other way. We'll learn something from it. People are not agreeing. They're managing what their child needs within the disagreement. Should they hide the disagreement? I don't know. Most families, most families don't need to hide the disagreement. They can say, look, we're trying to figure out who you are. That's a good thing. The kid says, oh, you're trying to figure out who I am, but you know, good luck. I don't know, but you know, maybe you'll figure it out. And you know, there's two different ways of looking at it. That's not news to the kid. That's not news. He knows there's two different ways. There's probably 6 different ways, but he sees 2 different ways. But the 2 of us are going to do it this way for the next month. And then the kid flutters and faints, right? And you say, oh, we just learned something. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Or the kid smiles and says, okay, but I want to participate in the punishments. If you're making punishments, ask me, I know what works. So then you say to yourself, we're learning something. We're learning that punishments are a good thing for this kid. He needs to have a feeling of cause and effect, and so we're going to try that. And if the kid says, the knife that I hid under my pillow, I'm going to take out and kill myself if you give me a punishment. So probably that wasn't the right way to do it. So you learn something. But you can't learn before you learn, right? You can only learn through experience. You have to choose how to make the experiment and how to work on it. So the father and the mother will always agree. That's where we started this conversation on the train. The father and mother will always agree are not living, right? Now, why are they always agreeing? They're always agreeing because they can't tolerate disagreeing. In other words, for them, this is a stable triangle. If they don't think the same thing, then somebody has convinced them, probably from their not so great experience in their own life, that that's dangerous. In other words, that the only way to be co-parents is to agree about everything. And that the conflict is a dangerous thing, and so we avoid conflict, okay? You have some neighbors like that? So we avoid conflict, but somebody wrote a book that said that's a good thing. So we signed off on that. Now we never have conflict. Who loses? Obviously the kids lose because they never get to have anything tried. The two parents have to decide based on what conflict they can't bear among themselves, how they're going to parent the kids. So nobody's seeing the kids. Because to see kids, it's better to see kids from 2 points of view than from 1. That's how two parents get 2 different views. But so the kids lose, but the parents lose. Right? This looks like a wonderful relationship. And sometimes you'll hear people say, I wish I could have me and my wife, we just don't see eye to eye. It's not like my parents who always saw eye to eye. And then you say to yourself, okay, tell me how they saw eye to eye. He never said anything. He closed his eyes and agreed with her. That's seeing eye to eye. Or they always agreed that they had to punish me no matter what. Did it work? No, but at least they agreed, right? So why did they always have to agree? Because they couldn't tolerate not agreeing, and now he's in a marriage and can't tolerate conflict, right? He thinks that it's the end of a relationship if there's a conflict. Miriam?
Yeah, like this thing you've been talking about, it's really been reminding me, I'm seeing a case right now.
Oh, that's already good. See, here we are, we're trying to learn therapy, and here we're connecting theory and therapy, and that's wonderful. So what did it remind you of?
So in this particular case, yes, the mother and father are together, but the main fight is between the mom and one of the children. And of course the mother feels like she's right, and she brings the father in to punish, or because she can't handle the child, right?
Right.
So, and the father tells me in the room, he's like, I hate this. Like, I hate, I have to agree with my wife, because how can I not agree with my wife? But at the same time, my daughter's right sometimes. So it's very interesting.
Right. So David Bryce, who was forced by Caroline to be difficult with Claudia, right, didn't like it. So what triangle are we dealing with here? We're dealing with a somewhat covert triangle. But David and Claudia, this husband, think about your client. The father and the daughter have some sort of a more positive relationship. He doesn't want to punish her. He thinks she's suffering. As a matter of fact, he thinks he's suffering because of her mother. So that's a covert positive bond there between, that's a perverse triangle, because the father and the daughter have a covert alliance, and so the mother is in a negative relationship with the daughter, and the mother is in a negative relationship with the husband.
Well, yes and no. That's why I can't figure out. That's, I think, my question. Is she in a negative relationship with the husband, or are they in a positive relationship, or is it in between?
Right. It would be, anybody want to help Miriam? You guys are always also having supervision, so you know what it's like to think like a supervisor. Yeah.
I think just the fact that he doesn't agree
Right.
and he can't communicate it with her makes it not so positive. Like
Makes it negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, in other words,
It's stable, but it's negative.
If you think about an eye position, he doesn't have one. He has a covert eye position in a way with his daughter, but actually it's an alliance against his wife. But he's unable, you see, when he says, I do what she tells me, but I hate it, that's not a positive relationship.
It's not?
No. She may think
Because
it's as
he's
good
doing
as she can.
everything she says, as then they're staying as one unit even though.
But they're not seeing as one unit because he hates it.
Okay.
Right, they're not seeing as one. If they were seeing as one unit, then we have the one that we saw on whatever. But and we have the parents in alliance, but they like it. They can't tolerate having conflict. Here, he knows there's conflict, but he does what she says, and you can guess that the daughter knows that when he punishes her, he hates it. Right? So she feels that she's still in alliance with him, and he's just doing it to make the monster happy. But he's not talking to the wife, right? And we have a, does that help you?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, have you seen triangles like that in people that you're seeing? Okay.
So the concept of like being on the same page for the child, does the issue become when they don't agree that the child then gets confused?
Right, that's what the books say, that you have to be on the same page, because if you're not on the same page, then the child gets confused. So let's just think about books and pages. You have to be in the same book. In other words, no people can ever be on the same page. It doesn't exist. Even if both of you think, but both parents think that your child needs discipline, they don't feel, if you ask them, and what would be a good punishment? One says a little more, one says a little less, right? The idea that you're on the same page is a way of regulating rather than allowing for intersubjectivity. And I'll give you a little hint. All of the books that are popular are regulatory books. That's what sells. People want an answer. They don't want a question. They want an answer. So if you want to make a lot of money, figure out how to write the next regulatory book. Just figure out which generation you are in. More punishing or less punishing. That's just, get it right. Otherwise, don't want to buy a book. But the popular literature is all about regulation. That's what people want to read. And is it a negative thing? It's not a negative thing in the same way that regulation is not a negative thing. If you have a family that can't reach regulation, you're better off starting with regulation. The problem with regulation is not that it happens. The problem is that that's all that happens, right? How do you write the book that says once you feel more secure as parents, then open it up. Then once you see what's common to you, once you see that page that you can both sign on, then figure out what are the differences in the margins. You have the same Gemara, but different Tosfos. You have a Machlokas Rishonim. You have a different way of looking at that same page, right? Now, can you write a book like that? That's the great challenge of the 21st century, because it's possible that on the internet you can indeed do things like that, and that something you become more like a forum, and that there's a place where you can go from regulation to intersubjectivity, but I doubt it. Because it's not very popular, and people prefer, the kinds of answers that then they're good answers, just like regulation, just like the stable triangle is a good answer for a time. It does something, doesn't do something negative, but inhibits something else, right? So, so that you might need to be on the same page. And when you're a therapist, if you recall, remember the first slides that we saw about regulation, right? If you're a therapist, you say, oh, these parents can't agree about anything, and so the kid is confused. Okay, is that everything? That's the whole therapy? That's not a bad place to start. So you say, listen, I'll tell you what, let's figure out something that the two of you can agree on for a week, or for a minute, something that you can say to your kid, that you can say, the two of us agree this is what we're doing now, and we're going to see how it works. You see how that's different from saying, we've been in therapy and we've discovered that we're the same person. You only have one parent with two different faces. And that's wonderful, because then there's nobody to talk to, because we always agree. So there's no place for you. Then you have a perverse triangle. So you don't want to do that, but you do want to say, let's start with regulation, if that's where we need to start, but let's not end with regulation. Regulation is addicting. That's why those books sell. All of addiction is regulating, and all of regulating is addicting. It makes you feel secure, and it makes you feel not only that you don't ask, can I grow? You say, I don't have to grow. I'm regulated. If you look, for example, at the 12 steps that regulate addictions, it started with alcoholism. So you have a dry alcoholic, right? That's the idea, that you can never get past being an alcoholic. You can be an alcoholic who's not drinking, or a porno addict who's not looking, or a narcotics addict who's not shooting up. But you're always still the addict. And so then 20 years later, because the 12 steps has no exit, you just stay in it and become addicted to the 12 steps. And then, is it better than being addicted to heroin? Yeah. But then you have children, and the children are saying, why are you telling me that you're an alcoholic? I haven't seen alcohol in this home since I was born. Why are you acting like an alcoholic? Why are you going to those meetings? Why are you telling me that I'm a child of an alcoholic? What is going on here? And the answer, if you're too well regulated, is don't ask that question. Because if you ask the question, I'll go back to drinking. A better answer would be, after I got regulated, I could move into subjectivity and actually talk to my wife instead of the two of us just talking about who's not drinking, right? And so that's the 13th step. And there's a 13th step in families if you look at them over time. If you look at the first 5 years of curing an addiction, you don't see it. You just see that this is a regulation that's necessary. But if you look at families, remember Bowen, 60 people, 60 years, right? If you look over time, you say, there's more than 12 steps. There's something else beyond that where you stop dealing only with addiction and whether you are or you aren't. Because in the end, yes, alcohol, no alcohol, still you're dealing only with alcohol, and that doesn't open into subjectivity. That's the problem. You have that problem with families that say, well, we need to find a page. So the therapist says, oh, okay, here are a few pages. Jump on a couple of them and find one that you can both live with, and let's try it for a while. But and the therapist says to himself, but I'm not going to let you get addicted to it. I want you to move through it, and then, remember the graph? When you can go from regulation, when the regulation is achieved, I'm going to ask you to become unstable. And if I don't ask you to become unstable, because you leave therapy, you say, solved, problem solved, the kids are all learning and behaving. So life will ask you to change, because whatever you're doing now can't be stable over time. Life brings with it more development, other changes in the family, and so if you're regulated now, at some point it's not going to stay stable, and then we'll go on. Yeah.
It's very unlikely to happen.
What's that?
If it's very unlikely to happen, that they feel too comfortable. And I'm thinking of one of my clients, it's a couple who...
We're thinking about clients, that's a good thing. We can start to hear from the other side too. Yeah, what are you thinking about?
So a couple who don't agree on anything,
Right.
and actually triangulate with the father with the children. They're all on his side and they want him, and never want the mother. The mother feels very out and is very hurt by that.
Right.
Because the father openly disagrees with her all the time, does everything different than her.
Right.
And she's like the not one thing. And so I was trying to make them like in more of a unit and suggest them to agree sometimes and to negotiate, even if you don't really agree, but do it for her or you do it for him.
Right.
So that you can be a unit in front of the kids, and the kids stop feeling all the time that he hates her, so I'll also hate her.
Right.
But I don't have to worry that they're going to be too addicted to this regulation, because it won't happen.
They just what?
I'm saying I'm not worried
Right.
that if they do that too much, that they'll get addicted to this kind of regulation, and he'll like being in one team with his wife.
Right.
I know that won't happen so quickly.
It won't happen. Nothing happens quickly. Have
I don't
you
know if
noticed
it'll ever
that?
happen.
Right. What? Okay. So now, if you say to yourself, okay, well, that's a stable triangle, isn't it? Right. The father and the children, and the mother is out. Two in, the other one out. So now, who's the big loser in that? L'chora, it's the mother. She's belly aching. She's unhappy, but she's also the change agent because she's saying this isn't good. But who really is the loser in this relationship? The father and the kid. The positive relationship is a pseudo-positive relationship. But a pseudo-positive relationship is harder to change than a negative relationship. Mother schleps them in and says, this is not good. So she still has the voice of, there's some I position there. which is saying, I don't like it this way. The father and the children have lost their I position, and they're simply busy protecting each other from her. So that's not a dyadic relationship that has co-creation. It's a lower differentiated dyad that is based in regulating through the fear or whatever of the third party. So then, the children say, as they grow up, and some of them that you'll see as adults, they say, well, I could never argue with my father because he was busy protecting me from my mother. And you're saying, that was an interesting triangle, right? And so you could never have a conversation with your father? Not about us, only about her, right? And so now that he's died, I don't know what to do, I'm lost, right? So you'll see some situations like that. Dad is sick, what am I supposed to do now? I'm 40, and the family has changed because, we're all mortal, so things change. And this was something that couldn't change. So when it does, you get lost.
So in terms of therapy, when you try to imitate like the father's death, you know what I mean? Like,
What's that?
when you do therapy with them,
Right.
I would try to move towards that position.
So now we're getting to something that we're going to get to later, which is what do you do with this? Say we're just doing theory here, and if you ask, okay, so I see a stable perverse triangle. The kids are aligned with the father, and they're against the mother. How are we going to approach this? Now, you'll see when we deal with the Bryce family as well, that the therapist takes different positions. The simple position in this kind of a triangle is that you talk to the father about what kind of a mother he wishes his children would have. And you find out that he thinks that this isn't good for them. But he's never said that to anybody. He can't say it to them because he's saving them from her. He can't say it to her because he's afraid of her, right? Afraid of her probably in the sort of way that we saw David and Caroline. So then you have to find a way to have David say, this isn't working. There's something that's not working for me. I don't wish this for my children. I want my children, if you have a high level of differentiation, it's lower, it'll blow up, and then you work with it like it happens in the Bryce family, and we'll get to that a little later. But let's say that you get the father to say, this isn't the kind of home that I want for my kids, right? So then he becomes a change agent. Then you say to him, okay, I'll tell you what, how about if you help your wife to change her relationship with the kids? Because they need your permission. Why do they need your permission? Because they think that they're being loyal to you by being difficult with her. So they need your permission to go and find a better mother, right? You need to open that up. And what you'll end up finding is that he says, I can't afford to do that because I'm less secure than she is, right? So then you have to help her to be more secure with the fact that the kids can stay close to him and have a relationship with her. And in order to do that, what will happen is that the kids will keep coming in the middle. So in actual fact, what you do, which is what we'll be learning next time, is you get the kids out of the triangle. In other words, you have to move the kids out of the couple part in order to have the couple talk even about their co-parenting, right? But in order to do that, they have to have permission from both sides that they can stay out of it. Now, that's why doing parental guidance is as limited as it is. In Israel it's very popular these days because nobody wants to see kids in the room. And the reason that you guys have been learning with Barbara for this semester is so that you won't be afraid of bringing children into the room. But one of the things you do when you bring children into the room is get them out of the room, right? But what does that mean, you get them out of the room? You help them to exempt themselves. You help them to say, when we go home from the therapy session and mom and dad start to fight, we go to our room and leave them alone because we know they have a therapist. In other words, if you just say, out of here, we're just going to talk to your parents, so what's going to happen at home? The parents are going to have a difficulty, and the kids are going to jump right in, unless they take themselves out. So in the therapy room, you help the children to take themselves out in order that the parents can actually work. That's completely different from doing parental guidance and telling the parents what to do with the kids, because see, that's a no-brainer for the parents. They come in and say, fine, we're regulated, we know how it is at home. So both of them keep saying, yeah, in the room, because the kids aren't there, but it's not real. So what you end up having to do is have the kids realize that they can take themselves out at home, in life, and then, so what is a positive triangle? It's not a triangle, it's a triad, which the computer doesn't want to show you, but you have it in the reader. It's where you have mother, father, and the child, and each dyad can co-create. In other words, father and mother can co-create between them. Father and children and the child can co-create between them. And the child and the mother can co-create between them. How does that happen?
There's always conflict when that happens.
What's that?
I'm imagining when that happens, there's always conflict because it's not stable all the time.
Well, you see, it's not stable because co-creation and intersubjectivity is not stable. However, it does allow people to feel more alive and more connected in the way that we talked about how intersubjectivity is actually a higher level of regulation because you can understand each other and not just force each other to do things. But that means that the children vote that they want their parents to be able to co-create. And the mother votes that she wants her husband to co-create with the children. And the father votes that he wants that relationship to be positive. In other words, that's a very unstable, it sounds terrific, right? Everybody's happy, everybody's, mother wants dad to have a good relationship, dad wants mom to have a good relationship, kids want the parents to be able to create between them. It's unstable, right? So when you see it happening, so then you say Allah Nising, because people are able to live with this level of instability. Why? We go back to Maria's word. They're secure enough to be able to do it. A lot of the people that we'll be seeing here are not secure enough to do it, which is not a deep kind of pathology. It's like a basic form of humanity, that people are not so secure about their relationships, the relationships of others that they're also in relationship with. And that's how the stable triangle comes to protect things from changing. Okay, I think we're going to practice that now, and the questions that will come up will either show up in the exercise or in the soon-to-be reactivated blog. Up to you.